In November 1941, the Jews of Moravia and Bohemia were hunted down and deported to the main fortress of Terezín. They would be held here until the extermination camps of the East were ready for their final liquidation. Terezín became the largest concentration camp in the Czech lands. Not only Jews from Bohemia and Moravia, but also from Germany, Austria, Holland and Denmark. They were later joined by Jews from Slovakia and Hungary. In less than 4 years, over 140,000 prisoners were brought to Terezín. Terezín was not an extermination camp. However, illness and starvation meant that 30,000 people died here. This is the where all the prisoners were registered. It wasn't just Jews that were sent here, it was prisoners people who committed a crime in the main fortress in the town. They would be sent here as well, and their possessions would be put in envelopes and stored in there. The officers to my left were where the camp general would be based, and he was notorious for his treatment of Jews. So when people came here and were registered, the prisoners would be beaten up by the general and his inferiors. He encouraged torture of the prisoners. He escaped after the war, but he was captured in 1946 and he was sent back here as a prisoner, where he was tried. He was executed. This is the first courtyard, and we have cells around here. We have mass cells and also isolation cells. So this is one of the mass cells here, which would hold about 200 prisoners. This would be a place where they would keep their belongings, although they didn't really have anything apart from a bowl and a spoon, and they would have to eat in here as well. The Jewish prisoners were kept separate from the political prisoners and the Russian prisoners. And this is the cell where the Jewish prisoners would be held. Now, it's very, very small. I'm right in the corner now, and that's how big it is. And 70 prisoners would be held in here. There was no toilet, no water. Very often they didn't receive food. This window would be completely bricked. There was no light coming through from the window, because the cell was so small. They had to sleep standing up. This courtyard, Courtyard A, would house about 1,500 people at any one time. This is the courtyard to the solitary cells, and prisoners would be brutally tortured and murdered here. And the Nazis had, of course, many methods of torture. One being is they would hose prisoners down in freezing cold water, and they make them stand outside for hours on end in incredibly cold temperatures, and then they would be thrown in the cells still with their wet clothes on. Now, these are all solitary cells in here. The prisoners basically didn't receive anything at all if they were in here. No food, no water. Some of the cells didn't even receive light. So as soon as the door was closed, it was complete darkness. After the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, which led to the outbreak of World War I, 6 of the participants were taken to this camp and imprisoned here, and 4 of them died due to the harsh conditions of the jail. This is where the prisoners would be sent to shower, and their clothes would be debugged. This is one of the debugging machines. It's the original one. Now, up to 200 people at a time would use these showers. Prisoners were supposed to shower once a week, but more often it was about once a month, and sometimes it would be they would go months without showering. Delicing of the clothes served no purpose whatsoever. because the prisoners would be given their clothes back. They would come through here, they would be given their clothes back and have to put them on while still wet, and then they would go back into the camps where other people had got lice, and so it didn't actually serve any purpose at all. And this is the hospital room. Now, originally there were 8 beds. The beds would take 3 prisoners per bed, and patients would also be on the floor. There were prisoners who were doctors and they would work in here, but they didn't have any medication and very little equipment, so they would perform all their procedures using pen knives and razor blades, even performing operations such as amputations. And of course the prisoners received no anaesthetic before the operation. So this was a shower room that was created by the Nazis purely in case there was any kind of inspection of the camp. The rooms were never actually used by prisoners. And this gap between the walls here is where 3 prisoners actually did manage to escape and get away from the camp. 7 other prisoners did the same thing, but they were captured, brought back to the camp and hanged. So because the small fortress wasn't created by the Nazis, it was built in the 1800s to protect Czechoslovakia from the Prussians. So all of this was, the Nazis basically wanted this for just for a prison. Now, just in the middle there is actually a tunnel which is about half a kilometre long, and there are over 30 kilometres of tunnels in both the small fortress and the main ghetto, which the Nazis had no use for, so they never used them. The 2 rooms to the left and right of the tunnels were just used as basic as morgues. So people who died here, their bodies were just carried and just thrown into this room. So this room would basically be filled with bodies waiting to be taken to be cremated. You can actually go through them. It's about the length of Charles Bridge, this one. Alright, let's go through the tunnel then. So as I said, when the Nazis took control of this fortress, they had no use for this tunnel or the other 30 kilometres of tunnels, the labyrinth of tunnels that run underneath the small fortress and the main ghetto. So it was just basically blocked off. There was no electricity in the tunnels then, and as you're walking around you will see like kind of gates to other tunnels leading off this main one. They were all completely open. Now they're all closed off, so tourists don't go wandering and getting lost. This is the site of the mass shootings that took place here. Just there where the monument is, that's where political prisoners would stand, and the Nazis would stand on this side of the moat and shoot them in the back. Approximately 300 political prisoners were shot here, mainly Czech communists. They were all killed without trial. And here at the Gallows is where 3 Polish prisoners were killed, and they built the gallows specifically for these 3 prisoners who tried to escape at a nearby concentration camp, and they wanted to kill them here, so to act as a warning to the other prisoners that escaping was not an option. Now the gallows are not the original gallows, because in 2003 they got destroyed when all of this area was completely flooded. They must have had some serious rain that year for this area to be flooded, and since then it's now home to tons of these little buggers. Check these out. I've forgotten the name of them. Very beaver-like, but there's loads of them around. There's a huge one over there. Some little baby ones down here. This is the gate of death. This is where prisoners from the camp would enter into this area and walk past that wall to the firing line. So this would have been the final journey, walking down here. This was supposed to be filled with water in case there was a fire in the camp, but It ended up just being used as a swimming pool for the camp guards who lived in this nice building over here. There were 17 guards and their families staying in this building. We'll get a better shot of it just around the corner. And there were also down here, over there, which is now a museum, was the SS barracks. The SS were here not to give out orders or anything, but just to make sure there was no rebellion and just to you know, move people from around the camp and stuff. And the guards made all the decisions, and this would have been like kind of 17 families living in this nice big building here. And this building here was a cinema for the guards. These buildings down here would be were former stables where they would keep goats and sheep and various farm animals, and the prisoners would, you know, look after the animals and get the eggs and the milk, and which was entirely for the guards. None of it was for the prisoners. The prisoners had to do with 200 grams of bread in the morning and 200 grams of bread in the evening. So now we're entering the Fourth Courtyard, and this is the only one that the Nazis actually built themselves, because of capacity. They were running out of room to keep people, even though the other courtyards were being crammed full. They still needed more space, so this one was actually built during the time that this small fortress was used as a prison, a Nazi prison. So you can see here how many people would have been sleeping in here. They were designed for 200 people staying here. But because they were overcrowded, you would generally get about 600 people. Now, I'm going to do the maths, so if you've got 600 people in here, that means you've got 300 people on each side, and there are 4 levels, so that would be 75 people on each level. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 kind of sections. So 75 divided by 11 would be what? Well, it's about 7 people. So you would have like 7 people sleeping in that area there. 7 people sleeping just there. Some smaller barracks up here. So there's a memorial here right at the top of the courtyard, and it's a memorial to the 3 prisoners who were executed here after trying to escape. So they were executed here so that everyone else in the prison could see. You can see in these solitary cells there's no window, no air ventilation. Inside the camp, the usual prohibitions applied, but for a short while, cultural life was allowed. It served a purpose. It gave the Jews false hope. From October 1942, virtually all the transports that left Terezín were headed towards Auschwitz. There were 63 transports carrying a total of 83,000 people. Less than 4,000 would live to see liberation. Of the almost 8,000 children that were deported from Terezín, only 142 would survive.
This